And so at this point, my thing back. At this point, this is just like one woman after another. And I knew, like, all my dad had was like pornography everywhere. Like everywhere. Like stackfuls of closets of it. Like everything laid out on his walls. And like I'm thinking like, oh, this is how I earn love. And then I wake up one morning and I see a purse on the kitchen table. And I heard like laughing and giggling upstairs. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. Here we go again. And I got really sad, and I remember running back to my room and just like shoving my head in my pillow and just sobbing. Because I knew, here we go again, my father does not give a shit about me, and this is a new beginning to my father not giving a shit. I had him for a glimpse of a moment. Now he's gone. He's gonna be gone. And I remember seeing them, like, I went to the window and they were, like, running out. And I was like, oh, God, like, here we go. And so within 1 week, at the same time I'm being bullied at school by my best friend, but let's call her what it is, a frenemy. And she was spreading lies and rumors because she was pissed at me. I always seemed, and I want to explain that, I was groomed to be codependent, right? Codependent is like trying to please, you grow up trying to please your parents, trying to please your step-parents, trying to please your grandparents, trying to please everyone but yourself. You can't be a child. And so I grew up like that, and now I see my dad like just like going out and dating these women, and I'm like, okay, I have to do that. I have to do that. Like, I have to, like, do acrobatics to, like, please these people. And I watched them run away together, and I was like, oh, no. Not again. Like, the last girlfriend exited, I made them breakfast in bed, and she thought I was making myself and my father breakfast, not her. I was making them breakfast. And she came down, took the engagement ring off, and whipped it across the room at me and left. And I was like, I made you breakfast in bed. Because I desperately wanted a mother. And so at this point, my dad's dating this new woman, and he sits me down and he tells me, like, she has 2 kids, and I'm like, okay, I'm here. At the same time, I'm being bullied at school. Severely bullied, like afraid to go to school because I had made best friends with a girl that was very frenemy-ish, very mean girl. And I met the kids, I met her, and I was so excited because I'm like, finally, like, I have a mother and sisters. And I would read them books at night. I did their makeup for the wedding, everything. And so that leads to me being very isolated at school, but at home I was like awesome. And wow, I was working one of my very first jobs at a cafe, Chocolate Town Cafe, because I grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, where they make chocolate. And I was on my feet from 4 p.m. till 10 p.m. And for me, as like a 14-year-old, that was like amazing. Like, yeah, I'm doing it. And I come home and there's no food left. They purposely did not leave any food. And I'm like, oh man, like feeling left out. Like, really? But like, still striving to be a part of the family. And so I told my dad, like, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten all day. And so he's like, just order from Applebee's. Order your salad. And so I'm like, okay, fine. So I'm like in the kitchen and there's a milkshake. I call Applebee's and there's literally a milkshake sitting there, and I'm like, "Oh, well, it's 10:30 at night. Like, nobody, obviously they left this." So I'm like sipping on a milkshake, and suddenly my one of my half sisters starts freaking out on me, and I'm like, wait, what's wrong? What's wrong? And the lady on the phone is trying to take my order, and she's like, hello, I can't hear you. They're screaming in the background, and I'm like, I'm sorry. No, I'd like to order like a Asian chicken salad with, and at the same time, I'm trying to comfort my half sister, and I couldn't reach her. I reached my toe out, and I'm like, shh, it's okay, it's okay. Hold on 2 seconds, and I'm here for you. And I didn't realize she wanted the milkshake. Like, I had no idea. And so she runs off, and I still have no idea. And so I go upstairs, and I get ready to go pick it up. And I'm like waiting for my dad, and, excuse me, and my dad suddenly comes barging in with my stepmom behind him. And he's like, you kicked your little sister. And I was like, what? Like, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Like, I read these girls bedtime stories. Like, I literally treat them like they're little porcelain dolls. I did their makeup. What are you talking about? And then it changed from that to my stepmom going, you make me take you shopping all the time. And I was like, what? Like, hold up. I never made you take me shopping. If anything, my dad convinced me to go shopping with you because you wanted to bond with me. And now you're turning this against me? And my dad suddenly just punches me in the face. And I'm hit, and I remember the hit, and there's blood spattering everywhere. The walls, the floor, my bedspread, everywhere. I literally was like freaking out. My dad goes, oh my God, what did I do? And my stepmom, who is a nurse also, not just my mom, they have the exact same name also, which is, how ironic is that? But my stepmom goes, oh, to my dad, it's just a nosebleed. Like, calm down. Like, don't care as much. And I looked in the mirror, and I didn't even recognize myself. I just saw blood. I just saw blood all over my face, what I was wearing, everything I was wearing. And I looked around, it was everywhere. And my dad goes, you're moving with your grandparents, and you're going to your mother's. You're moving in with your mother. And I'm like, no. Oh, no. No way. Are you kidding me? Like, who have you turned into? Like, I could not believe it, because it was like my stepmom, who, covert narcissist, that's covert narcissism, because she's a nurse, which they say many covert narcissists have a high level in society that makes them look good, and they act all sweet. I'm like, oh my God, she's a covert narcissist. Straight up. And she's got my dad, like, tangled around her finger. And she's like, they're like, no, you're going to live with your mother. And I'm like, oh, no. So they call my grandparents. I bled everywhere. My nose, all yet to say. And my grandparents show up, and they tell me to go sit in the car, and they're against me automatically because they give my dad everything. They gave my dad everything his entire life. And so I'm sitting in the car, and 20 minutes pass, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just imagining what it's like to be shipped to my mother with my stepfather. And I'm looking around like, are you? No. And finally, after 20 minutes, I was like, screw you. And I just open the door, and I start running. And there's farm field just all behind her house, and then quarries. And I was like in the dark. By this time it's like 12, and I'm like, or 11, maybe 11, 11:30, and I'm just like running. I even tripped and almost sprained my ankle, and I'm like, I had to literally listen for the water stream before I like slipped down the bank and was like listening to where I could stop. And then I had gone there before, and then running down the side and knowing the police are probably going to be called. I have to avoid that. I end up running through fields with cows and like seeing them, like cows, like kind of like very softly and far off, and then like feeling wires and being like having to like crawl through wires and like go through grass that's like up to here on me, and I'm like one step at a time, literally. And at one point I ran up to the cemetery. That freaked me out, and I was like, this is bad. I ran back down. I end up at train tracks. I go under the bridge. By the time I go through a golf course, and I'm like thinking in my head, where can I run? And I thought of my one friend who has a door to her room. And thank God for her. And so I run to her house. It took me 5 hours, literally 5 hours. And just to make sure nobody found me and I was like off the grid. And thankfully I went to the window and she was up. The lights were on. I could hear her and her sister. And I knocked on her door and she opened it and she's like, oh! They were like, oh my God. Like, what happened to you? Because I have blood. You literally could not even recognize me. And she invited me in, and I was like, my dad punched me in my face. And, do you need food? Do you need food? And I'm like, yes, I need food. Yes. Anything. A bowl of cereal. And they got me cereal. And the mother was sleeping on the couch and she overheard, like, that things were going on. She gets up and she sees me and she's like, what happened to you? And the father is actually a surgeon at the hospital, Hershey Medical Center. And so at that point, I didn't plan this out, but the mother I knew was like, oh, no, 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 no. We are taking you to the hospital because that is insane. And so they let me sleep a little, and the next morning we got up and went to the hospital. And I'm gonna cover my, geez Louise, I cover these babies. The hospital is required to call the police, and they called the police and they took pictures of me, and I got an x-ray. I got an x-ray, and it showed that my nose was fractured, and they said, there's no way you're going back to your family. And so I stayed with my friend's family for several weeks. God bless them. God bless them. Thank you. I speak out to you. If you ever hear this, thank you. And I tried to kill myself while I was there, actually. And the father, who's a surgeon, my friend had a softball game, and for some reason he had an inkling to say, no, you're coming with me. And I had started to take pills, trying to kill myself. And actually, I need to rewind, because when I was 12, that's the first time I tried to kill myself, when my dad just met my stepmother, because I was being bullied, and my dad was like gone from me. He was in a new relationship, and I ended up just like, it went through my system. But that was the first time I tried. And then here again, I tried again. And I had a savior. I had this doctor like, you know what? You're coming with me. And for no reason. And so, keep on going. And finally, I got a caseworker who's like, you're coming with me. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. And so from there on, I end up going to foster shelters. And I go in, and I remember freaking out because there were these girls that I knew were mean. I mean, these girls were from gangs, you know, like, and there were a bunch of them. And they're all looking, and then the guys are looking, and then the girls are mad because the guys are looking. And I called my aunt in the background, and I was like, please, like, is there any way I can stay with you? And she's like, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. And then she ended up saying to everyone that I was, like, sounded crazy. And I was, like, screaming and yelling. And I'm like, well, I know that's not true because I was terrified. And I was very quiet on the phone. So why would she do that? It was my mother's sister, obviously, of course. And I went through hell. Oh my God, I went through so much hell at these foster shelters. Every girl wants to beat your butt. Every girl. And all the guys want to see you and hook up with you. And now the girls hate you even more. And then I get moved to another foster shelter. And that goes crazy as well. And they abuse you. They treat you like crap. And eventually I got out. I had to stay with my aunt a little bit prior to them giving custody back to my father. And eventually they did. My father moved to a completely different town because he was humiliated from being in the newspaper for hitting his daughter. And so I get, like, sent off to this new school. And at first, like, all the cheerleaders want to be my friends. Like, all the popular kids. And then I end up making friends with this one girl who I'm like, oh, she's the most beautiful girl ever. And little did I know that, like, no, her mother's an alcoholic. And she's surrounded by the outcast friends for a reason. And I just fell under her spell. And then I got a very crappy boyfriend who just got high all the time. And I was, like, willing to please anybody because I was, like, groomed by my parents to be codependent. Codependency is when you don't listen to what you believe. You have no idea. You have no anchor. But you're like, oh, what do you think? Oh, okay, then that's what I think. And they would let us go for lunch. And I would go with my new boyfriend. And that girl. And she took over my life. And after homecoming, she got really mad at me because her mother was an alcoholic. After homecoming, we go back and we realize that she got one of the main football players trashed. And my friend was like, well, I'm not going out anymore. And I'm like, well, all right, I guess we're all going out together, except for her. And she found that out. And the next Monday, she had it in for me. And so her mother called our answering machine and, like, talked mad crazy crap. And my stepmom picked me up, and I was like, she is destroying me. And that is the one time my stepmom, like, stood up for me. She rolled the window down and was like, yelled at her and was like, you're not going to do this to her. But that faded. Nothing ever happened to that, and I kept on having to go to school, and I'm dating this kid that just smokes green all the time, smokes weed all the time, and treats me like crap. Not to say weed equals treating people like crap, but he did. And I would get my dad to drop me off, and it's like, dude, like, what are you doing? You're dropping your daughter off? And she's like destroyed inside, and you're giving her just away to this guy? Like, and he didn't give a crap. And at that point, I remember telling my dad, Dad, I am so depressed. And my dad was like, ugh. Okay, Tiffany, like, everyone's depressed. And he just passed me by. And that night, I asked for a ride to the grocery store, and I got a ride, which was like very close by, and I bought a huge family-sized bottle of extra strength Tylenol, and I walked back. I was like, it's cool, I'll walk back. I walked back, and I counted them one at a time with orange juice. I remember clear as day. And I thought I was going to die. And like, I thought I was just going to die. And I did not. I woke up in the middle of the night after taking 57 extra strength Tylenol. And I woke up and I felt just sweat pouring, and I felt death just inside of my stomach, like. And I knew, you have got to go tell your father. You've got to go tell them, because you're not going to die. You're just going to be sick. And so I crawled up the stairs, and I was like, Dad, stepmom, I'll call it, sorry. Dad, stepmom. And they go, I just heard, what? And I was like, I took pills. And that got them to come out. And they're like, why would you do this? And like, they called the ambulance, they called 911, and I'm vomiting blood at this point. And so they took me to the hospital, they strapped me down because my body was like shaking, and they made me drink 2 buckets of charcoal mixed with water to coat my stomach. And I had to stay inpatient for like 2 weeks after that. And I said, I am not going back to that school. Like, send me back to my hometown. And so I go back to my hometown gratefully after that. My grandparents said she can live with us. And I was so grateful. And I go back, and it was so crazy because I had this one really good friend, right? Who would be a really good friend, but also a friend of me. But she was there at that point for me, and I'm so grateful for her. But when the day I went back, all the people, I thought, all the girls, the popular, like, preppy girls, they were like, it was as if I punched somebody. That's how they treated me. Like, hi, so happy for you, bye, and like left. Like, cold cut, you're out. Like, that is, no, we can't have that in our group. Like, somebody whose father hit them, you're the enemy. And I was like, and so thankfully I had 2 girlfriends, and then 3, and then a group of guy friends that like embraced me. And so I thankfully, you know, and at one point, even during my freshman year, I want to rewind, because during my freshman year, a lot of girls were bullied. And that was like before I moved to this other school. And I remember one of the high school seniors, because we were friends, said, vote for me, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because Tiffany Vellotti says so. And within, just like the WWF, and within one class period, it was, my name was crossed out and put slut. And they would come to my homeroom, they would come to my rooms, they knew my schedule. And they would like threaten me, death threats. Literally, I got death threats. And I was removed from school my freshman year and put in outpatient. So that was like 1 year prior. I get moved to another school. Then I asked to go back. So this, you know, it was just hell for me. But when I went back, I made all these friends. Like, the guys were cool. And I had 3 awesome girlfriends. And that we're not like preppy, like, oh, we can't talk to you. And I made it through high school. My grandfather was a jerk. His depression, his abuse, his father left him for another family and had another family. Well, he started to take that out on me and was like, you're a like, he would just tear me down and drive me to school. Like, if it weren't for you, you ruined everybody's life. And, like, slam on the brakes so my head would, like, hit the dashboard. And he would just tear me apart. Just telling me everyone's life has been ruined because of you. And, like, I would sob on the way to school. And then I'd have to wipe my freaking tears off and walk into school as if nothing happened. And so that's where I was left. And so, of course, I started hanging out with, like, the party kids, you know? Like, of course. And they were amazing. I'm so grateful for the friends I was given. So fast forward, like, I got hired for this bar, the Coyote Ugly Hardware Bar, which was based off of the movie Coyote Ugly, where they learn dance routines and they dance in the bar and do like a dance routine, like art. And I got hired in the capital of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. And it was amazing. Like, we were like the stars of the state. Like, it was amazing. And, oh my God, like, eventually the boss, though, was very scary. And he would humiliate people on purpose. I was still a virgin at that time. And I remember he got on the intercom on his little speaker and was like, who's the virgin? It's either so-and-so, I doubt it's her, or it's Tiffany. And I was like, wow, like, no, it's me, but you're a dick. Like, what, really? And he would just tear girls down, like, you're gaining too much weight and, like, all this crap. And, but we did so many dance routines. Like, it was, like, one of the highlights of my life, for real. And so, at that point, you know, eventually I decided to quit because I couldn't take his abuse anymore. I would find myself crying, bawling from how he would tell people they gained weight and they just nasty. And one of my friends, one of the barbacks, his parents decided to open up a nightclub for him. And they hired me as a cocktail server, and then they were like, we want to hire you as a bartender. And I got trained as a bartender. It was amazing. I had to drive an hour and a half, but hey, like, I was blowing fire, like, everything. It was amazing for me. And in the meantime, there was this, FHM came out with this girl, Vida Guerra, and they had her booty showing. It was all about her booty. And she was like, everyone was freaking out. And they're like, I kept hearing from everyone, oh my God, you remind me of this girl, Vida. Vida, she's in this, Vida Guerra, she's in this magazine. You got to see it. You got to see it from everywhere. And so eventually, then I find her and I'm like, this has got to be her. Like, some guy who I was dating had the magazine and I was like, paging through it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's her. That's got to be her. And so, at that point, they eventually came out with a Back Like Vida contest, and I asked my barback if he could take some photos of me for a butt contest, and I did that, and I sent them in, and within 3 months, maybe, I'm like walking downtown Harrisburg, the capital, back home again, and I just hear like my friends from high school screaming, yo, Velati, yo, congratulations, you're in FHM. And I'm like, what? Shut up. Because I had started modeling at like 16, and it was my therapist that suggested it, and then the state paid for it. And I had this professional female woman photographer, and that got me out of my depression. And so here I am, fast forward, and I'm like, no way. So my friend and I are like driving from gas station to gas station late at night trying to find this magazine, and it's all sold out. Eventually the next day I find it, and I'm like, oh my God, like, that's me. I mean, it was tiny. It was a little square, but it said Tiffany Velati, Hershey, Pennsylvania. And it spread. And I was like, oh my God, like, thank God. And that was the tipping point. Within a couple days, friends of the family, extended family, contacted them and said, Tiffany's in a porn, which I was not in a porn. Like, it was modeling, and it was beautiful, and, like, what are you talking about? A porn is, like, somebody having sex. And so my grandfather, like, kicked me out, and then he would always kick me out. Like, he was so mentally ill. He would kick me out and invite me back in and kick me out and, like, beat me down. He would trap me in the bathroom on a school night and be like, ugh, like his like muscular wrestling pose. And I'm like, please let me out. I have school tomorrow. So I went through all of that. And so people kept calling my family, my grandparents, said she's in a porn. And I was like, hold up, hold up, hold up. Let me go show you. So I grabbed the magazine, I brought it in, and I'm like, here, this is what I'm in. Here, that's me. And my grandfather was like, oh my God, we're so proud of you. It's amazing. Where can we buy all these magazines? And I'm like, all the gas stations, all the magazine places. And he's like, to my grandmother, we're going to go and buy all of these, and we're going to send them to everybody talking crap. And I was like, oh, wow, like, he's sticking up for me. And so within an hour and a half of that, or no, I got to stay like a week and a half past. And he taught guitar, and apparently his students were saying, is that your granddaughter? You related to Tiffany Velati? I saw her in this magazine. And that caused him to kick me out again. And so my car had broken down. And so I was friends with this one guy from this other city, a friend.